think the first thing I always like to start with is how much outside of songwriting, how much do you do a lot of writing outside of songwriting, whether it's journaling or, and if I have songwriters sometimes tend to do a lot of writing outside of songwriting. So how much do you do, if any?
I do a lot of writing outside of songwriting because that's where the songwriting comes from. The journal is a backbone to my life. It's a dialogue with my subconscious. And when I'm in a good place in life, I'm journaling. And I find that over the decades, especially when I write pen to paper and I can keep them in journals hardbound on shelves, that decades later I can pull them off and visit my former self. And I often note that there are more evolved periods of my life when I am in the practice of journaling. It makes for a healthier mind, spirit, uh, emotional decisions. So out of that journaling comes song seeds. And I am working on a book now. And I've made a few attempts over my life to write books and I've abandoned it. It requires, wow, longevity of application. And that's a serious discipline. So I am in the process of writing a book too right now. That is a book on creativity. So
Perfect.
yeah, I do quite a bit.
So with the journaling, because I found that songwriters fall into a couple of categories. Some of them don't journal and they have no desire to journal. Others do it every day. Others don't do it, but they wish they do. And even those that do, don't always, those processes are separate. They journal and they write songs, but those two things never intersect. But it sounds like to me that you use that journal as a way for, you said, song seeds. So are you constantly, is it a deliberate, I guess, process with that, or just happens to emerge that way?
It just happens to emerge that way. It's amazing what a kinesthetic process it is. Like I feel it in my body. If I feel that there's songs burgeoning, like a pregnant feeling, a creatively pregnant feeling. And I go to the journal for a myriad of reasons. Sometimes it's dreams. I'll go years without vivid dreams and then I'll have vivid dreams. And lately, for instance, I'm having vivid dreams again. It's as if my subconscious is trying to tell me something. And I know that I'm going through some life transitions. So I'm trying to pay attention to them. And I've just started journaling again, as an example, because I feel that my subconscious is calling. I think out of that will come songs. I just have a feeling. It's very intuitive. And sometimes, like the songwriting process itself, and this might serve as a segue out of this question, but sometimes the songwriting process itself comes in different forms. Sometimes it's on the written page as a song seed, or even it can look like a flow chart. Remember those scientific flow charts from
Oh yeah.
8th grade science? And it might be an idea of some kind of lyrical verse setting up of the subject to a chorus to something happening instrumentally, or it could just be flow of consciousness, word on the page. That's what happened to me for like Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? It was very lyric flow of consciousness. But sometimes it comes like hands of shapes of hands on the keyboard, or walking in the woods, or gardening, that it's more like a conceptual idea. And it might come musically first. And I like approaching songwriting from different angles. So I don't repeat myself. I try not to repeat myself. I guess we always do, but that I vary it. I vary the approach. So sometimes I want to try for a melody first, and I'll sing a melody that I make up to the rhythm of my footsteps, like on a woods walk. Sometimes it's lyric driven. Sometimes it's hands of shapes on keyboard, or I'm not really a guitar player, so I'll try open tuning, something easy to play on the guitar and take it from a musical harmonic place first. But I like to vary it, vary keys and vary tempos and meters and perspectives, like first person. And then I usually write in first person because I'm largely autobiographical writer. That's just something I believe in, and that's what I like, like John Lennon and Joni Mitchell. They're probably my biggest songwriting heroes. Bob Marley too. And that, their life informed their work, and it's like a line of an autobiography. You can see the chapters of their life, and that's what I'm trying to do with my life. It just seems to be happening that way. But once in a while, it's a challenge, or there's a calling to write in a third person perspective. It doesn't happen very often, but once in a blue moon, I'll do that too.
So it's not, this is interesting. So I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around this. So you're intentionally varying things, or do you just wake up and think, I feel like it feels like this kind of day? Because I feel, to me, like as a writer, I'm more a creature of habit, where I feel like if it's happened in that chair, I'm going to go back to that chair, because I feel like that's where the mojo is. But it sounds like you're much more willing to be flexible. But does that flexibility come with, is it a deliberate flexibility, if you know what I mean?
Yes, it is a deliberate flexibility. And if I found the mojo in my chair, I would go back to that chair as well.
Yeah.
But if I'm between seeds of thought, I'll change my approach. I'll change that approach so that I might visit a new place in my mind or be inspired by a new thought. So that I'm not, because I've written hundreds of songs, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to always just go back to the piano, the same instrument, because hands are like old dogs. That's what Tom Waits says. They tend to go to the same places. And it's true. Our hands tend to like the same kind of shapes of chords, which favor certain melodies. And then it can get samey, samey, samey. So you just try to shake up your process a little bit so that you have some fresh perspective, hopefully. That's the goal. And that's what I'm trying to do. That's why sometimes I try to write from the melody on a woods walk, or just lyrics. And maybe there's less melodic movement with a high lyric song.
So this is something that I've talked to a lot about songwriters, and I've heard this a lot: the rhythm, the influence of movement on songwriting. I interviewed Stone Gossard from Pearl Jam a few months ago, and he has this whole theory about the cadence of the movement of the limbs on walks is an absolute influence on songwriting to him. And I've heard songwriters say things like swimming is a big one. Walking, hiking. Songwriters have told me that they get that the songs, depending on where they are, that affects the type of song that they write. And it's interesting because I just yesterday did an interview with a novelist who wrote this amazing book called Blacktop Wasteland. And his name is S.A. Cosby. And he talked about the same thing. Even as a novelist, he found that when he goes back and reads those books, that some of those lines, he remembers where he was when he wrote those. So do you deliberately then go, how much of deliberate movement is a part of your process?
I absolutely agree with this. And I just heard an interview with Joyce Carol Oates by Tim Ferriss on his podcast.
Oh, wow.
Wonderful. And she's so prolific, right? And she's one of the most decorated writers. So prolific, really staggeringly so. And she routinely implements walking and running. And when I'm in a good way with my writing process and on my path and applied, I absolutely intentionally implement walking, running, gardening.
I've heard that a lot too.
Yeah, I understand swimming too, because that's tremendous. It's just hard to get in the pool and all the time it takes to like dry off and shower and change. It's such a time suck, but it's probably the thing I'll gravitate towards when I get older, because it's just so good for the body, right? As we get older.
Yeah.
And I have swum at times in my life, and it is amazing the mind space that you're in. It's like your mind increases in size of the pool. You're thinking, you're alone with your thoughts and your breath. It's very yogic and kind of otherworldly. But also gardening, I find like it's been really helpful And it's great multitasking too. Like if you love to garden, that you start an idea, you know, at your instrument or at your journal, you have it in your mind, and then you go off to walk, and then you go off to garden, and you get the physical exercise, you get work done in the garden, and it's your mind is all kind of bubbling and percolating in the back with this idea, this gestational thought, and it develops. Like I'll get ideas and I'll go back to the piano, and it's developed just through the walking. I think, you know, increased blood flow, aerobic activity, it's good for the mind, and leaving it, coming back, leaving it. It's very healthy.
But the gardening is interesting too, because I've heard a lot of songwriters tell me about that gardening is a great way for ideas. And what I hear from them is that it has to do a lot with boredom. That maybe, you know, running is different to me because there's an element of pain involved. You know, I'm not one of those people that effortlessly runs forever. I feel like, how much longer do I have to go?
Right.
But right. And I think there's also a little bit of that element of kind of concentration. But gardening, I've heard, because it's distracting and you're moving with your hands, but it's not as deliberate. But I have heard gardening a lot. And I guess that's a long way of saying that how much of, because I think Scott Adams from Dilbert, he wrote this article, I remember it was like 15 years ago in the Wall Street Journal, and he talks about how boredom is a necessary element of the creative process. And I wonder if that's where gardening comes in. I don't know, that's a lot to say there, but what are your thoughts on that?
No, I'll take I see that in two parts. And the gardening, I also think not only is it physical, you know, it can be a lot. You're hoeing, you're digging, you're lifting bags of soil, and then you're dealing with plant consciousness. And I do believe that plants have consciousness. I mean, it's proven. That again is scientifically proven. And actually, The Secret Life of Plants is, I really do love that book. And it's all about proving that plants have consciousness.
Yeah.
I mean, they have heliotropism, they move to light. And being with that consciousness is affecting in some way. It slows me down, it's meditative, and I feel brighter and more creative as a result. And I've always had plants my whole life. I mean, of course, they prove too, like it makes air quality better in your living space. I have a plant that I've had since I was 14 years old. I named it Stanley, and I've taken it all around with me.
Wow.
Moved it to LA, to New York, to San Francisco, and Boston, and now the North Shore of Massachusetts. I've literally packed it up in boxes and moved it with me. I live with plants, and I live with plant consciousness, and I garden, and I love it. So I think that there's something almost spiritual about it, and it's a mystery. Plant consciousness is a mystery, but there is consciousness, and it affects me. I know it does. That's one part. The second part is, help me out. You talked about
The boredom, the element of boredom, how much is boredom? And I think really quickly, that's why a lot of songwriters, maybe that's the shower link too. You know, so many songwriters tell me they get ideas in the shower, and maybe that's to do with the water. I don't know. But anyway, it's more of the boredom thing.
Boredom. And see, I wouldn't call it boredom. I call it like long thought, or like what I think John Lennon likened himself to being a dreamer so much. You need non-interrupted long thought time. And that's one of Joyce Carol Oates's things too, is like interruption is the enemy of productivity in your writing process, in your creative process. So that means, you know, especially so if you're a family person like me, you know, I've been taking care of kids and adult children now, and it's been such a drag on my creativity. And I've seen that from my mothers and my grandmothers and my great grandmothers who couldn't have careers with their beautiful gifts and talents. I feel their mantle on me. I'm like carrying the torch for so many of my mothers and my mother's mothers. But it's uninterrupted dream time, to have what I like to call long thought. It's like surfing long waves, dream waves, where you get to really like almost meditatively zone out and follow a thought through uninterruptedly. It's rare. It's rare to have that kind of time. And we writers, we need that time. So I don't think of it as boredom. Like I don't get bored with my time. The times that I've been productive in my life, I was reading a lot, I would journal a lot, and I would have long thought. I would be physically active and then come back to my process. And I didn't have interruption. So, having a family, that is like anathema to
Yeah.
the process.
Right.
And I love them and I need them, and they're number one. They're just number one. They are, and they make me better. But it's been tough, especially when they're young. So like I would have to clock in with my writing process. I would tell myself like, okay, I'm going to write from this time to this time. And when, after drop off and before pick up, it's brutal.
Yep.
Now, and I'm going on a toot here, but now the kids are grown and they're off to college, and it's a new transition for me. Like I'm going through empty nest, and like I'm starting to get vivid dreams, and it's very exciting. Like I need to pay attention. I'm still interrupted by life and like album release and promotion and stuff that I don't like nearly as much as the creative process, but you've got to do it. We all have to work and support our art, right? We have to support our creativity and talk to people. Like we have to do that. But now I feel like I'm on the brink of some new era again, and it's exciting. I don't know what that is yet, but I hope it's more productive and less interrupted.
Yeah. So let's talk about the ritual. I'm fascinated with artists, with writers' rituals, and how important is the ritual? Time of day, place, whether it's a room, things you have to have with you. I interviewed someone, the novelist I talked about yesterday. He has to wear a baseball cap when he writes. He doesn't know why, he just has to wear it. But how important is the ritual environment to your writing process?
Oh, that's beautiful. I like the hat. That's a cool thought.
Yeah.
It has changed over my life. In my 20s, I really experimented with sleep, and I found that my most fertile time was midnight to 4. And that was true for periods in my early 30s as well. But it's like normal consciousness, 9 to 5 consciousness goes to sleep. I don't know how else to define it except kind of metaphorically, and that feels like everybody's asleep and my antenna can divine with the cosmos and receive the messages. That's what it felt like. It's uninterrupted. Your phone isn't ringing. You don't have to be engaged with this and that. You just don't get interrupted. And when I worked with, like, say, I remember when I was working with he's a producer.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't get to work until so late at night. It was exhausting because I was a young mom and I was breastfeeding, and I had to stop breastfeeding when I was working with Dawn, because there was just no way I could do it all. We would work so late into the night, and it's true, we were uninterrupted, and there was high productivity in the wee hours. But now that I'm the age I am, and I'm like early 50s, I like that kind of soft morning time. I really love it.
Yeah. Now define morning, because songwriters morning can be like 11 o'clock. So define, what is the morning time?
Just, after you've had a cup of coffee, you've been outside, and I guess it's morning, and it's after a walk or a run. So that's daytime hours for me now. But morning is great. If I can, and now I have 2 dogs and I have 2 cats. So that's like, again, more drag and interruption, but I love them, and they walk with me. But after I get like the whole animal rituals out of the way, feeding and in and out and all that, I just apply my ass to a chair, and I can I can mentate and free associate. Yeah, after caffeination, a little walk and dogs and everybody's fed and watered and walked, that's like pretty golden. So maybe that could be like, I would say 11 is really nice. Even like if I didn't go on a walk, 10 a.m. to, I'd say 10 to 1 is really golden now.
Yeah. Can you write for long stretches? I can go for about an hour and then I have to get up for like 5 or 10 minutes to walk around. But can you write for long stretches?
No, I have to get up and walk around. I just need to move and pee. And I, like, as a vocalist, like, drink, 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 pee, 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 drink, 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 pee, pee, pee. It's good for your prostate too. You know, if you're a man, like I tell that to my voice students, clearly I sing that so that they remember it. But it's so like all vocal health, like it stems from hydration, like nearly like well over 90% of vocal problems stem from dryness. You need to lubricate this little fleshy pink larynx and be tender to it. So I'm always drinking, and when we speak,
Yeah.
we're aerating, we're nebulizing in a way, right? So you lose water when you speak, you lose water when you sing, and you need to rehydrate. So I'm always drinking, and I'm always going to the bathroom. So I never sit still. I can't sit still. Oh,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard when I teach. Like I'm wriggly. I stand up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm guessing then, is there a place where you get your best writing done, or do you tend to move around? Like, does a room matter to you, or are you literally moving around as you create?
I'm in my studio now, and this is my war room. This is my
Okay.
sacred place. And it's got this like beautiful northern white pine on the walls.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm surrounded by trees, essentially. It's like plants, again, plant consciousness. And it's still, in a sense, a little bit alive. Like it's still, I have sap on the walls. It still leaks
Oh,
sap,
wow.
and it expands and contracts with heat, right? And dryness and wetness. And it makes for good sound. Like when you record, I've always loved the sound of wooden studios. Wood to me is like a beautiful sound. It's semi-absorptive and semi-reflective, and it's warm. So I have wood on the walls and wood on the ceiling. There's a little bit of brick, and again, pine on the floor with radiant heating. It's warm. I've got my Yamaha piano. It's like my workhorse upright piano, and I've got a couple of Rhodeses and guitars and an amp in here. And most importantly, it's an L attachment to the house. So I don't share walls really. The one wall has like brick, and it has a double door and like a giant do not disturb sign. So I really do feel like separate here, and a little more with nature. I can see out. I hear birds, and it's important like to have that separation. And ultimately I would love to like build a little like studio shack out there where I'm really separate. But this is as good as it gets now, and I only share one wall, and it's my place. I put I don't know if you can see it, but like I put
Oh, yeah.
I put all kinds of stuff on the walls, like ideas.
Yeah.
I can't maneuver my laptop with all the cables attached, but if you could see that wall, it's like just covered with pages and covered with ideas and inspiration and like flowchart looking drawings or articles that inspire me. I'm always like, if you walked around my house, you'd see an article or a photograph that I just need to see. It inspires me, it triggers thought. And it's amazing how often that has manifested reality.
Yeah. So you mentioned all these pieces of paper on the wall. I will tell you that songwriters are incredibly brand loyal to well, I guess my question is, first of all, when you're writing lyrics, are you a pen and paper person or a computer person?
Most of my years have been pen and paper, and I still do that. But I have tried I've sat down and tried, because again, I want to approach this from different angles, right? For freshness. And I have tried sitting down, and also like loving the stories about Bob Dylan and his highly productive years of sitting down at a physical typewriter,
Mhm.
and keeping poetry flow. Like you being a PhD in English would know more about this, but there's different forms of poetry, and he would keep form in mind and then create words and then go to music later. So um, keeping that in mind, I've tried, and I'm a really fast typist. I think it's a piano thing. I don't know. Um, I've tried going to the laptop, the computer, and writing lyrics that way. And it was revelatory. It definitely opened a new door for my
Mm.
process, and created work I don't think I could have created otherwise, that was just so story driven, so lyric driven. And melodically, it was a lot, um, almost like small and nursery rhyme-ish, smaller melodically, because there was so much lyrical content. It made really for different work. So I've tried it, and I really love what it does. It's so much easier for me to thought flow if I'm typing quickly on a typewriter, like a keyboard, than it is like, oh, this
Yeah.
feels so hard now. I'm like, my hand gets cramps and I'm slow and my writing is atrocious. But I uh I still use both. I use both now, and they have different personalities.
So I guess that was what I started task was, before I sidetracked myself, was songwriters are very loyal to the brand of pen and the type of paper. Incredibly loyal. I could do a whole website dedicated just to that. Color of ink, brand of pen. Does that matter to you at all?
Oh, I know. I've heard about that. Like Neil Gaiman and his fountain tip pens, and I've heard about that. And again, like I would like to try it, but I haven't. Maybe it's because my life has been a little too haphazard with like the road
Yeah.
and divorce and kids and moving too many times. But if I can get a Le Pen, I really like those black Le
I've
Pens.
heard that.
Yeah, you can get them in
Um,
art stores.
yeah. Um, and I interviewed a couple months ago Daniel Lanois, the producer, who is also a songwriter, and he told me that he does all of his songs on a giant. Each song is one page of a giant like art paper, like 18 by 22-inch art paper, pure white, and it's a bunch of flow charts. It's a bunch of thought bubbles, and it looks like almost like it's not a standard lyric sheet. As a typewriter, it's thought bubbles, it's words, it's digressions, it's lists, and all that stuff. And I thought that was so interesting, kind of the visual aspect of that songwriting process for him. But he can only do that obviously with a pen and paper. Um,
I love that.
so
I love putting blank paper on the wall and creating
yeah,
work. And yes, flow chart and arrows and crossing
yep,
out, looping back. And I do that in my journals too, but they get small. So I understand
yeah,
wanting to get bigger. And I've worked with also, like when working on albums and putting albums together, that's really helpful to go to a big whiteboard, or I like paper better. So I like paper on the wall. But I've done whiteboard too, just to kind of put a lot of pieces together. Like I imagine if you're working on something like a novel, that would be really helpful to get
yeah.
big, to put it together. Yeah.
And in the songwriters that do actually use typewriters swear by them, because and they all mention the same thing. It's the sound of the keys. It's not the same as a keyboard.
I just bought a typewriter for my daughter because she's a burgeoning writer. She's a really talented writer, and she's a freshman at college, and her teachers are encouraging her, and she wants a typewriter. And
Really?
I was so surprised too, because this is so much easier. And when I learned typing, it was on electric typewriters,
Yeah.
which is easier. And so I went on eBay and I bought her a Hermes 3000, which needed some work. And just trying it, it was tough. Like you have to go bang, bang,
Yeah.
bang, bang. It's really physical and different, slower and harder. Like it's very physical, very rhythmic and loud. So I like the loudness because that's saying like, do not disturb. I'm in a rhythm.
Right, right,
you
right.
know? But so I think that's going to be really interesting. What does that do for her and her process? I don't think I could do it. I think it's
Oh, really?
really like tough physically. I think I might be able to do the electric one
Well,
though.
see, I think I interviewed someone recently who talks, he does journal writing every morning. It was Mike Dowdy, and he does journal writing in the morning, dream journals on an IBM Selectric. And then at night, he does an end of day journal on a 1983 Apple IIe computer. I mean, I'm talking green screen, like almost 40-year-old computer. But he says there's something about the glow of the keyboard of the monitor at the end of the day that really associates it, you know, he associates with night. And there's something about the keyboard and the typewriter in the morning, but the electric typewriter. And he said, I know, he said it's the whiteness of the page, how that wakes him up. And I thought that was really interesting, kind of, you know, that just thinking about, I guess, what those things have to do with his writing process.
I
So
love it. I love that all these writers have identified these small details
yes,
that help them. And I can imagine the feel of a 40-year-old computer keyboard and the sound of it as being really nice.
yeah,
Don't you think it would? Like bigger buttons and like
yeah,
like a it takes a while for the button to depress, and I can just
right.
hear it in my mind. The laptop, and I hate my laptop. Like I have a new computer and I hate it. Like I'm speaking on it right now, and I hate the feel of the keys. So I have to find something new. What do you suggest?
Well, so they actually, I think I may have a solution. So they make now computer keyboards that that look like old. I mean, they're Bluetooth keyboards, but they're computer keyboards that look like old school typewriter keyboards. So they have those giant keys with the deep, what they call key travel, which is, it's those giant keys. You know, now I know what you mean. The computer keyboard, like there's barely any travel, but these
Yeah.
have those giant old clunky, and so there's incredible deep travel. So you can buy them now. I mean, they're retro, but that's the irony is that they are modeled after the old original either typewriters or you know, those 1980 era keyboards. So there you go, the best of
And
both
yet,
worlds.
and it's probably soft, so you don't have to bang, bang,
Right,
bang, right?
right.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna look for that.
Yeah,
That's
you can.
fantastic.
Yeah,
And I think some of these, it's been tough as being a mom with taking care of everybody. Like I haven't kind of honored my own process enough. It's been pretty primal, and like I'd love to do a deep pen exploration and a deep keyboard exploration. That
yeah,
would be very cool.
yeah. But I think to me, it's confidence. If I know that that chair works, that pen works, that I mean, I have one or two types of pen that I use. That's all. But to me, it's confidence, and you know, I feel like if it's happened before with those things, and I think that's why I like to be aware of what works for me specifically. Whether it's like I will, if I'm in a rut, I go to another room and I write. You know, and I find that change of environment really helps me. If I'm just not writing as quickly as I think I should be, I'll go to another room. And I think having that awareness of what works for you makes you a much more effective writer.
Yes,
Don't you think?
I do. And another thing that we've kind of lost a little bit because of the pandemic is going out in public, like being siloed in your
Yeah,
mind, but in public, or being around other writers or workers at a Starbucks, say. There's
yeah.
something that kind of forces you to create. It's great.
Well, also just the practical element is if you're around people, there's things to write about, right? I mean, you hear things, you know, you see things, and you know, you're hearing people, and you hear a line, and you go, "That's a great line. I want to write that down." Or you see things. It's hard to do that when you're in your house all day. And you know, I guess what I've been asking a lot of songwriters over the past year is, you know, I've read so many articles by people who say this is going to be a great time for songwriters because you're not touring and you're inside all the time, and you're going to write great songs because there's nothing else to do. 95% of songwriters I've interviewed for the past year have said absolutely not. They wrote a lot for the first month and then they went cold because it's just
Wow.
difficult to write with great emotional weight, like that heaviness. And the heaviness is not something people, I think, my experience of what I read is that people think, oh, this is going to be a great time for songwriters, but not many of them have told me that. They told me the exact opposite, that it's difficult, not just for the past year in the pandemic, but in general, emotional heaviness is a difficult place to write from immediately. Maybe you can write about it later, but in the moment it's difficult. So what do you think about that?
I agree. I find that when like traversing the heaviness, the inner psychological depressive place,
Yeah.
uh, is important. You're growing and you're going through feelings, but I usually write when I'm feeling motivated and happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I mean, now when I was, early 20s and turbulent, I would run to my writing as therapy, and it still is therapy. It's still that, but to fit in with the rest of my life, I can't be in crisis anymore. Like I have to, it's a loving process. It's a healing process that gives me psychological health. But I need to be in a happier place to write. It's interesting. It's a conundrum because like a catch-22, it makes me happier when I write, but I need to be happier to write. So I don't know. It takes a lot of persistence and application just to
Yeah.
sit down and do it. And there are times when I'm writing on a napkin, or I've lost all kinds of thoughts out there. I guess I haven't been as honoring to my process because, again, like touring, I was on tour a lot in my younger life when I was prolific, then the mothering, but I've managed to get the work out scrappily, here and there, different odd journals, different napkins, papers on walls. It's hard kind of also keeping all of your recordings together.
Mm-hmm.
Life, right? Life. It's the interruption, like Joyce Carol Oates says.
Yeah.
But we have to live. That's like,
Yeah.
that's the food of our
Yeah.
inspiration. So, I mean, you must find that too, right? I mean, life, living,
Yeah, certainly.
relationships, and
Yeah,
family.
absolutely. So two more quick questions. One, when you're in a rut, do you try to push through, or are the techniques that you use to kind of get out of that rut when it comes to writing? I mean, on the day-to-day, not long-term, but on the day-to-day, if you feel like it's just not happening, do you just say, I'm done for the day? Do you try to push through? Are there techniques that you have?
If I feel blocked and frustrated in a rut, I probably will get up and move. I feel like the blood flow is important, the change, and I'll kind of check in with my body because my mind tricks me, right? Our minds are clever and they trick us, but our bodies are wise and they kind of let you know how you're feeling about something. And I think maybe I'm stuck somewhere. So check in with my body, and if it's stiff somewhere, I kind of stretch into it or I walk it. I try to honor its needs. So I can be a good home for the creativity and the mind and the spirit inside. So I kind of check in with my body. I stretch, I walk, I move. I check in with my pets. I try not to get distracted. That's the thing. Like there's a million things that can take you off course when you start checking emails. So the best thing would be to go to something long, again, like long thought, the walking, the gardening, swimming, which I would like to do when I'm older, like maybe in my 60s, I'll start swimming. So much easier on the joints.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, looking long, thinking long, stretching, and honoring the body's needs. Or like doing something radically different that's not intrusive, or kind of more left brain analytical the way phone calls and emails are, but rather music. Like I'll put on something that's really uplifting. Like for instance, there's this, I think it was like 1979. It was like prime Quincy Jones production era. He produced this track for Donna Summer. And it's like, it's not necessarily like the greatest lyric song, but it's called Love is in Control, Finger on the Trigger. And you just cannot not dance to this, right? So I'll
Huh.
put on something that's like just badass, like off the wall, Michael Jackson or like Earth, Wind and Fire. And it's like, yeah, just dance and move and it's fun. And I feel uplifted and I feel more positive. And then I can come back, like got my
That's really
mojo
cool.
working a little more,
Yeah.
to the more sedentary, difficult process of writing. But yeah, dancing is like life saving, especially in those long snowy winters, which you know well. Or like late at night, you can't go outside for a run so easily. I'll put on like joyful, grooving music that makes me dance. And that so helps me, helps my spirit,
Yeah.
helps my body.
That is cool. I like that. So last question. You've already mentioned Joyce Carol Oates. I found that songwriters are voracious readers. So I'm a big Joyce Carol Oates fan. I think one of my favorite short stories, and I first read it in college, Where Are You Going? Where Have You Been? I think is what it's called. And I think actually the beginning of it is a line from a Bob Dylan song.
Oh,
But
wow.
anyway, who do you like to read? Who are some of your favorite authors?
Mm. Well, one of my favorite authors is Hermann Hesse, and I'm a big Jungian psychology nut. Um, I love Jungian psychology, and so therefore I love James Hollis, who's a Jungian psychologist practicing in New Jersey, but he has so many beautiful books out. Like there's one that I really landed on because I was going through a hard time and I was blocked and I couldn't figure out my life then. It's called The Middle Passage from Misery to Meaning in Midlife. So this is nonfiction. And this is by James Hollis, and he has other beautiful ones like The Eden Complex and Swamplands of the Soul. They're all amazing books, Jungian psychologically based. So I love Jung, I love James Hollis, Joseph Campbell, and Hermann Hesse, who is fiction,
Yeah.
but was a peer. He was friends with Carl Jung. So I love, and I love his symbolism. Like he's using the archetypes. He's using the archetypes. He's using the collective unconsciousness in storytelling. The hero, the wise
Yeah.
man, princess, the earth mother, these things that we all relate to. And so I bond heavily with all of these writers, but I also have I drink from the fountain of Zora Neale Hurston and Maya Angelou and Alice Walker and Toni Morrison. They're sheroes to me. Like I love these women since college. They've been profound for me. Those are the ones that come first, like the kind of Germanic men and African-American women, so
Right.
they have spoken to me and informed my path a lot. That's what's coming to me right now. But if I went to my library, I'd go, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. But I've even, written songs like in dedication to Zora Neale Hurston, like Sawani Joe is a song of mine I wrote,
Yeah.
totally influenced by her and her lyric, her words informed my lyrics. Maya Angelou, the poetry and the freedom and the autobiography of it. So that's what comes to mind.
Yeah.